Hey everyone, welcome back to the Monday Night Pod. This week's topic was the second part of David and Goliath. Once again, these teachings are on YouTube. If you search SNL Summerlin, you can see the teaching there. Every week it comes up. We'd encourage you to watch the teaching first, as the podcast is in supplementation to that, where we're looking to go in further depth on each week's teaching.
Yeah, so last week we set everything up by understanding the Goliaths in your life, the giants in your life, the reason behind them, and the right perspective that you're supposed to have on them. Because without that, it's very unlikely that you're actually going to get into the fight with them, let alone have success. And so we see David do that and go through all these things in preparation for the battle with Goliath, whether it be the weapon that he has, running up to him quickly. I hope that those who watched the message and were listening, that the main takeaway was, in order to have success, because in the natural, yeah, this problem is bigger than you, it is stronger than you, it is more than you, and it's going to require even more than you are. And you get more than you are when you take it from the physical, from the natural, into the spiritual, and hand it over to God to where it's his problem. And it becomes his problem because you're in alignment with the Lord. You're in step with the Spirit, which means you're in step with his will and his purposes, meaning that anything that would come against it is coming against the Lord. So once you put it into the Lord's hands, there's nothing that could come against you. There's no weapon forged against you that will prosper, right? And if people would actually have that perspective, it gives you a whole new level of confidence to where you can run after everything. And it's almost like you feel bulletproof, not out of arrogance, but out of, I'm in submission to God and I have faith, being sure of what I hope for and certain of what I do not see. And this is just the overflow of that. So that's how you get the victory.
Yeah, 2 Corinthians 10:3 says, "For though we live in the world, we do not wage war as the world does. The weapons we fight with are not the weapons of the world. On the contrary, they have divine power to demolish strongholds." So I think we've all been guilty of that at some point in our life, where we are presented with a Goliath in our life, this big problem, big bad champion, tall, huge, massively strong,
Intimidating.
right, and intimidating. And our response can be to be risk averse, right? Because you are taking a risk there, right? You're walking out in faith. We tend to flee from those problems. Or you made a really good point tonight. You said delay those problems instead of confronting them, because you made the point that David ran to the battle line to attack the problem versus fleeing from it like the rest of the Israelites were doing, or delaying it like they'd done for over 40 days. And this problem was just not going to go away. Each day, Goliath came forth and shouted his defiance, right? But that, the one verse that I love in this section, I love a lot of them, but it says, as he was talking with him, Goliath, the Philistine champion from Gath. So David is talking to the men there, and it says, the Philistine champion from Gath stepped out from his lines and shouted his usual defiance, and David heard it. That's what it all pivots off of, because it was business as usual for Goliath with this problem of just dominating everybody, but David heard it, right? So we talked about that last week, which is the difference in mindset and perspective, right? Where the Israelites are, when the Israelites saw the man, they all ran from him in great fear. So yeah, you made real good points tonight about, we tend to flee from these problems, or delay these problems. We're not confronting them, but it's that the divine power to demolish strongholds is what we need.
Absolutely. And a lot of times I talk about we're like Saul, we look at things from the natural, meaning what are the resources I have, what are the finances, what are the connections.
Or just, because think about this. You said this the other day. How many people in the last 2 months have come to me or you and talked about this problem that they have? Sometimes the first time we're meeting them at a service, the first time, and here's this problem that I have. And then we say, here's what you should be doing with this. And saying, you need to follow up with other believers about this and become accountable to other believers. We need to pray about this. And that's the end of it. Because they didn't want to hear that solution. They didn't want to hear a spiritual solution. They wanted to hear, here's some kind of fix in the natural. Here's some hack or gimmick that's going to fix it or make this all go away. Or they just want to complain about it.
Yeah.
How many times have we heard that in the last couple months?
Too many,
Right?
unfortunately.
Yeah, because people are not seeking a spiritual solution, but that is the solution. Everything that's going on in the physical has its root in the spiritual.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
And if that's what's going to get to the actual root of the problem, is to address it in the spiritual.
Absolutely.
Right? Which you made the point tonight. A really good point about what David says back to him, where he says, "This day the Lord will hand you over to me, and I'll strike you down and cut off your head." Right, the whole world will know that there is a God in Israel. It's a bigger purpose beyond David, right?
Exactly.
All those gathered here will know that it is not by sword or spear that the Lord saves, for the battle is the Lord's, and he will give all of you in our hands. So many are going to benefit from this victory. Mm-hmm. All these Israelites that were running in fear are the same ones that end up plundering the camp of the Philistines later on, winning this battle and plundering the camp of the Philistines after, because David stepped forth in faith.
Exactly.
And one of the key verses here is that the Philistine cursed David by his gods.
Exactly.
Cursed David by his gods. That's right from Genesis 12, the promise that was given to Abraham. I will bless those who bless you, and whoever curses you, I will curse. So the Philistine is cursing David by his gods, who are not even real, and cursing somebody under covenant with God. And now the Lord is going to make this victory happen, right? But I think that it's almost like a confirmation, right? You said that tonight. It's like when your enemies are yapping like this, when they're mocking you, when they're slandering you, cursing you, is that going to make you fall back? Is that enough to stop you? It's often, a lot of people get stopped by that.
Yeah,
they can't handle the noise and the chatter that comes with it. David says the reverse to him, right? Because Goliath says, "I'll give your flesh to the birds of the air and the beasts of the field." David says, "I will give the carcasses of the Philistine army to the birds of the air and the beasts of the earth, and the whole world will know that there is a God in Israel." Right?
Yeah, it was a great victory. And like you said, one man's faith, actually walking in faith, even though he had lesser equipment, right? It didn't matter. And sometimes God will give you less just to show off, right? His power is made, our weaknesses show off his power, right?
Well, I thought you made a good point tonight when you were talking about that you have enough.
Yeah.
If God called you to it, he equipped you for it.
Amen.
You made a good point about how he didn't go and install stuff because he wasn't used to it. So he's a shepherd. This is what he's used to. They would train with these things where they would get incredibly efficient. If you look in ancient warfare, they were whipping these things at incredible velocity that it basically had, if they were well practiced, they were accurate from distance, and it's basically the stopping power of a bullet. So this is what he had trained with. This is what he was prepared for. What he had, this wasn't like, oh, here's, let me try this new weapon out today. It was like, this is something he had done for, as a shepherd for years leading up to this event with nobody watching. If you're an athlete, that's a word for you, right? But here he is out in the fields with the few sheep as his brother is mocking. But that whole time preparation is going on, not just killing the lion and the bear, but just whoop, whoop, over and over. So he's deadly accurate from distance. Not anticipating the whole time that this giant, this champion, is going to come against him. He's just out there drilling every day, nobody watching, just being faithful.
Amen.
Right? But there's always the payoff, right? So the work you do in secret, people are going to applaud you for in public. We all want the applause in public. It's whether you're actually doing the work in the dark.
Absolutely.
Right? So there's a word just there in terms of faithfulness, right? Which is a fruit of the Spirit.
Amen. Absolutely. Yeah, so anybody listening, I hope you are encouraged. Understand, like I talked about at the beginning, if God is sending you bears, if he's sending you lions, if he's sending you Goliaths, take that as a badge of honor, because it shows that he trusts you and he thinks enough of you that you can handle this with him.
Trust you with trouble.
Exactly. And so if you turn the battle over from the natural to the spiritual, rely on him and walk in faith, you as well will have those trophies and those testimonies to advance the kingdom, bless others, and experience your walk with God on a whole nother level. So that's the story of David and Goliath, the Monday Night Pod. Hope everybody has a blessed week.